AEW is about to run the largest non-WWE pro wrestling event in North America since the January 4th, 1999 WCW show in the Georgia Dome. Wrestle Grand Slam will be this Wednesday before approximately 19,000 fans in Queens, New York. I'm Ryan Joy and I run MinutesToBellTime.com, a website and database tracking pro wrestling around the world. On today's show, we're talking about what we think might happen at Wrestle Grand Slam, especially in the main event. Travis Severance is in the house. We also have headlines for the last 24 hours, including more on Ric Flair and an update on the G1 Climax. And this is the Daily Wrestling News Show for September 21st, 2021, where we sort through all the bullshit in wrestling news to find you the truth. Travis, Wrestle Grand Slam.
What an apt name. It is a Wrestle Grand Slam. Wow.
It's funny when they announced this, I jumped right at the fact that New Japan is running Wrestle Grand Slam like for months over there. And I thought, is this going to be like some sort of, tie-in thing that they're going to, well, like we got Suzuki on the show. So I guess there's a bit of a tie-in, but it doesn't appear to be related at all. They just wanted to use the name, but it's right next to Shea Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. And Suzuki's on his North American tour, so he's going to be all over the place. You should reminds me of the Eagles Hell Froze Over tour. Like he's playing all the hits that he possibly can. So good for him. Arthur Ashe. It's funny listening to Tony talk about it. He's like, it just kind of fell in my lap. Like it was there. It was an obvious thing. Nobody had run it before, had seats. I mean, I think they started out with, what did they say? They were going to do like 12,000 there, or they were going to do 15. And then I think there's been at least 2 bands where they've opened up seats more and more for the show and stuff. And I mean,
they're looking at 19,000 right now. Last I checked was last night at 8 p.m. They were about 600 tickets out.
That's crazy.
A sellout, which would be like 19.4. So they're pretty close to 19,000 right now.
Yeah, and I mean, so there's a lot of metros in that area that they can pull from. Boston's not too far, Philly's not too far. You've got a lot of big populated areas. And I mean, it's impossible to not say that the promotion right now is on fire. The momentum that they have right now, and with Tony still saying more surprises to come, like I don't know, the card for the 2 different shows is pay-per-view caliber. Not much throwaway, not much waste. And the interesting thing to look at it is they're all decent sized storyline builds. And some of them are coming off the heels of the conclusion of storylines from the pay-per-view, which was only a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So it's possible, folks, to take 2 wrestlers or 4 wrestlers or 6 wrestlers and shoot them into a storyline, develop it for 3 or 4 weeks and have the blow off, and then move on to new opponents.
Or not, or continue the story.
Yes.
We're going to have to sort through. So I mentioned in the opener, it's been 22 years WCW held that record. January 4th, 1999, WCW show at the Georgia Dome. It was a Nitro. I believe Hulk Hogan defeated Kevin Nash in the main event of that show.
I wasn't sure if that was Hogan Nash or Hogan Goldberg.
Right.
That would have drawn that number. So that makes sense to me. I mean, completely different time though, right? Like what's exciting about this is, I bet you if you go back and you were to look at those Nitro numbers, they were probably pulling some kind of a crazy 8-2 that night or something like that. Just the sheer volume of people, the limited number of channels, the lack of streaming service and stuff. The game has completely changed now, but the fact that live bodies, you're comparing apples to apples in this day and age, especially in the middle of the pandemic like this, and those are all vaccinated card holding people. They got to get in there too. Like, I think one of the concerns you and I had talked about maybe backstage previously, or when they had announced that, was, oh, you know what, the attendance is probably going to take a hit for this because everybody that goes in there has to show proof of vaccination. And apparently we were very wrong.
Well, the first block of tickets were sold before that came out. Before New York made that rule. So it's possible that we could still see many empty seats on account of that, but the tickets sold.
and they keep selling more. So
Oh,
even if the initial batch had put them on the secondary because they didn't want to get a shot or something, then then they all got bought up, and we're still releasing more tickets. So
yeah, I had buzzed over on a couple of different secondary market sites. The tickets are going for a pretty good clip still.
yeah,
Like
yeah, I'm not surprised. But if you're not in Queens, you can still, the second best seat is the right in your living room, I guess.
absolutely.
So there's a whole crap load of matches. I think there's 11 matches overall. They've only announced 5 for Dynamite, which is very interesting. It's very interesting. They always announce 6, regardless of if they have CM Punk's going to talk or someone's always going to talk. They usually always announce 6 matches. We have 5. So the main event, presumably the main event, I guess maybe it might not be. Maybe it'll open the show. Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson, non-title match. The reason I say maybe it won't be the main is because maybe they'll want to give us the illusion that it'll run a long time and do a time limit draw. That's a possibility. And maybe they go with Malachi Black in the main event or something like that. But Travis, this is the hardest match. Predicting how they're going to book Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson when we just had the whole Christian Cage beat Kenny Omega leading to the pay-per-view. How is this going to play out? What's your prediction on how this thing plays out?
Well, you're going to see some dirty DQ schmaz finish, right? Like they usually do.
I trust them not to do that, considering it's only happened one time and it was during an Iron Man match, so it had no relation to the finish.
Right. So somebody's going to take a pin here.
Right. Or a submission.
Just the fact that, like, 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, the idea of Bryan Danielson in the ring with the best bout machine Kenny Omega was like a pipe dream. Like, ha ha ha, we're ever going to see this match. And this is his first match. Welcome to AEW, kid. You're against our title holder, our trademark guy, our main event superstar. Here it is. So it's weird because we know they book smart and we know they tell intelligent stories, and that's the reason why all of us are there. The talent is phenomenal and the writing is quality, and it can actually keep my brain in that chair the entire time. The non-title is weird because you don't know if that's a swerve. It makes it so it's hard to predict the finish.
I think it made sense though, because if they want to stick to the whole rankings thing, like we have rankings, we're not going to hot shot Bryan Danielson into the company and give him a title match right away. I think that was a good call to do
Absolutely.
this.
You do lose the locker room being able to bitch that he was put into that position, but what it does is exactly what you're saying. They bring somebody in, they can throw him into a title match, or they can throw him into somebody that's holding a belt without saying this is a title match, and you get to see the match you want to see, as opposed to, I think the other thing that it does too, curiously, is if they've got other storyline plans that they're working towards, which I think all of us are pretty positive that Adam Hangman Page is the finish here. You can bring a guy in that you signed last week, boom, put him into a match that everybody wants to see, and then build back around that too. So smart move. I'm not surprised with it. How do I call this?
Well, first, I think we're going to Full Gear with the same match, and that's in Minneapolis, or presumably Minneapolis. That's news that's been coming out in the last couple of days. Nothing confirmed yet, but I think that's where we're headed.
And I think in a weird twist, usually what we have is Bryan Danielson getting himself into a 3-way match. But since Bryan Danielson's in this match and Kenny Omega's here and it's in Minneapolis, I think what we're going to see is Brock Lesnar, Minnesota resident, weaseling himself into this 3-way dance.
Maybe him or Shelton Benjamin, one of the two.
You got two choices. Great wrestlers.
There you go. So this match, though, all seriousness aside, or all seriousness
on the table,
I think we have Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson in Full Gear. So what do we do in this match? If that's do you agree that's where we're going, or do you think there's something else at play?
I think we see that. I don't see anybody else mingling around in that realm right now. It's weird because he kind of stepped in and became the Jurassic Express guy. Like, I think we'll probably get a 4-way with Christian Cage as well. Coming in soon. We might see another Jungle Boy match in there, but I don't think we're going to Jungle Boy with a title. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I think in an odd situation, and I think where this is very different than where his status is compared to somebody like an Adam Cole. I think Adam Cole needed that win. I think Bryan Danielson can take a pin here, and it's kind of compelling. And they can give him some shit about it and say, you thought you were going to come in and you were going to be the big main eventer and you got your ass beat, and that's how it goes this time. I think Kenny not losing is a lot more important than Bryan winning to me.
Interesting. So I don't like the idea of us going to a draw in this match because it's such a high profile event. You know, it's their biggest crowd ever. All that stuff, like a draw seems a little bit unsatisfying. But there is the storyline thought rolling around my head of Kenny Omega couldn't beat Bryan Danielson in a regular match. And so we need to see the conclusion. We need to see the full match. So then you go to the pay-per-view.
It just feels same to me. Which is we're just coming off of Kenny taking a pin from Christian for the lower belt into, okay, you beat him in the big dance. And then we move into this thing and we kind of run back the same sort of thing. Like, don't get me wrong, nothing is new in wrestling. Like, everything that we see is the same all the time, but it feels a little too mirrored to me to go that way.
Yeah, that's the thing that's rolling in the back of my head, is like we just did the same sort of thing with Christian Cage. Although both matches were announced at the same time, both the Impact title match and the AEW title match. So it wasn't like the outcome of the Impact match made the AEW match. But, you know, like you said, there's nothing new in wrestling. So maybe they do go right back to it. It's also like, do you beat Bryan Danielson right out of the gate? Like, I'm sure he's in the back. I'm sure he's in the back saying, please beat me, because, you know, that's kind of his shtick. But
he doesn't care, right? No. Like, you're not going to bury Bryan Danielson, and you're certainly not going to bury him with a loss to Kenny Omega, who's essentially been unbeatable.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know. He took the loss from Christian Cage. Christian Cage, relationally to Impact and what he'd done historically, smart move. I'm sure Scott D'Amore was like probably beating that drum the day that he walked into AEW and they were going to cooperate and stuff. Like, I'd love to have this guy with a belt, and not for nothing, anybody that had any illusions that Christian wasn't going to be able to go did not watch either of those matches, because the guy can wrestle. And I think what we're going to see too is just this constant escalation of quality of matches. There's so many guys that can really go right now that it's going to be like, Punk's got to be kind of on the outside sort of shitting himself. Like, gosh, I got to keep up with pace with all these guys. Like, this is a lot.
Because at some point, you know, Punk is actually building wins. He's probably going to be wrestling Kenny Omega, I presume, for the title at some point in the next 5 months. So
you would hope. I'm interested to see, you know, so he moves into this program with Hobbs and Team Taz and stuff. I think it's great how they, you know, how they've actually moved right into that and stuff. And it'll be interesting to me to see how Punk sort of maintains a winning record while escalating young talent that he beats.
Yeah.
Can he continue to do that? How long does the shine stay on that? How tricky can he get with how finishes work with certain things? I don't know. The Taz thing, the Team Taz thing that has me curious is like, is this Brian Cage annoyance with how he's been booked a real thing? Is this them just planting seeds? Like, I know it was his significant other that was running her mouth on Twitter, but as a Brian Cage guy, I can certainly look at the way that Brian Cage has been booked, and I'm like, it's not how I thought it would have gone for Brian at this point.
I did see Brian write on social media yesterday that he was over some injury or something, that he was just getting over it. So he's setting his sights back on Ricky and all that stuff. So I'm presuming there was something there to the fact that he hasn't been on television.
Correct.
Yep. So yes, so CM Punk, we might as well move over to that. Now that's a Rampage match. He's going to be talking, you know, do a live interview 48 hours before his first TV match. So he's going to do a Punk versus Hobbs on Rampage. Punk's going to win that one. So there's not much discussion there.
Very, very different opponent though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm interested to see how he works that style opponent.
Can he do the go to sleep? That's a huge.
You'd have
That's
to
a
do it
huge
from
man.
like Hobbs draped on the apron or something like that. Like, and then you've got Hook that's roaming around as well. Like,
Yeah, and the graphic, the official AEW graphic, has Hook in sort of I don't know,
Street Fighter pose.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got, like sort of looks like boxing shorts on, So maybe we're getting ready to unleash Hook's haircut. So
yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time getting over Hook being MJF's gum guy back in the campaign days. So we'll see.
that was Lee Johnson.
Oh, that's right.
So let's move into the Malachi Black and Cody Rhodes match, because that's going to be on Dynamite tomorrow night. So is another one that's a little bit tricky, because when Cody comes back for revenge, he's usually on the winning end. But Malachi Black, if they're going to continue booking him in this manner, is this going to be a big signature victory for him? Because he can beat Lee Johnson, he can beat Brock Anderson. Those victories don't mean much. He needs to beat somebody, and so is Cody the guy?
Cody Rhodes, to get his shine back, has got to come from underneath now. I think that you're exactly right in how he's been booked with all of his storylines, and he always wins the comeback match. I think Malachi Black, to stamp his character, needs to trounce him, and I think Cody's got to pick himself up. And I think, to me, I think they're going to tell the story with Cody that they were set up to do after the Brody beatdown, where we really didn't get to see that pay off or anything like that. So I think that Malachi is kind of slotted in. Not that he's going to take, if he's doing he's going to do his own faction. Like, he's not a Dark Order guy. Like, he's going to have his own, and he kind of called his shot with Butcher and Blade and stuff like that. So we're going to see House of Black be a real thing. And he's probably going to have some, some different people come in for that. But I think Cody gets pounded on here and pretty badly. Like, he's probably going to get bloodied up.
Yeah, there will definitely be bloodshed. That is just a Cody thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think I'm leaning on Malachi Black here. Okay, and MJF and Brian Pillman, there's not really. I mean, MJF's going to win that match, so we don't really go into that too deeply.
I mean, I love you, Brian. I love you, Linda. I love your whole family. This was a nice, quick, shiny rub for you to get.
And of course, I'll be making all my official picks tonight on the Essential Wrestling Podcast. But this is good conversation here, so we can get the best picks in my brain here as we move into Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho for the AEW World Women's Championship. That's on Dynamite. So Dynamite's loaded. We've got Malachi Black and Cody Rhodes. You got Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson. You got MJF versus Brian Pillman. And oh, by the way, don't forget about Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho. And Sting's on the show too. FTR versus Sting and Darby Allin. But Britt and Ruby, I don't see any stopping Britt Baker. I think the momentum is just going to keep rolling. But then again, Ruby's probably going to have a good moment here. Biggest match of her career, I think.
Yeah, she's just been over the moon with her experience so far in AEW. I think this is a really nice match to put together. I think it's a treat for the women's division. She can obviously still wrestle. Britt, this will be a nice match to watch, because I think the two have not dissimilar styles and similar body types. And I think that it's the promo work that they did last week was a hell of a setup for the match this week.
Yeah, that was fire. That was
good
promo.
Their promos have been working really, really well lately. So whoever's in the back that's helping them put them together, and their own creativity has been crazy. And I like that they take the gloves off, and they take the gloves off a little bit more, and you get some inside baseball, but you get the reality of how they feel about the situation. And man, for the talent to allow each other to go that far with each other just says how much they really respect the product, the fans, and each other, right?
Yeah.
Because these digs that they've had and these shots they take are like, occasionally they go too far in the Max Caster situation, but in general, they cut to the quick. Like, it's there. So a hell of a build for a quick thing after a Rumble victory.
All right, I'm going to read off some of the other matches, and then we can kind of just circle into whatever we want to talk about.
Sure.
We also have on Dynamite FTR versus Sting and Darby Allin. And then over on Rampage, we have the Super Click, Adam Cole and the Young Bucks versus Christian Cage and Jurassic Express. It almost felt funny to say Adam Cole and the Young Bucks. That's why I stopped. Punk versus Powerhouse Hobbs. We talked about Men of the Year versus Jericho and Hager. Lucha Bros, Santana Ortiz versus Private Party and the Butcher and the Blade. Anna Jay versus Penelope Ford. And what I presume will be the main event of Wrestle Grand Slam for those in attendance is going to be a lights out match between Moxley and Kingston facing Archer and Suzuki.
Just so good, right? Like, we got one of the most world-renowned Japanese wrestlers with his factional partner, Lance Archer, who came from over there, had a massive splash at the G1. AEW signs him, brings him in. We got Suzuki Goon. We got John Moxley, who, following Chris Jericho over there is a hard thing to do, and he put himself on the map over there after the Painmaker stuff. And you got Eddie Kingston, whose reverence is all Kobashi and all the Japanese legends. And if you really, really were to dissect his style, it's very Scott Norton-esque. It's very Japanese strong style. It's not a lot of glitz, not a lot of glamour. And this should be a knockdown drag out and like a really fun fight
and
to
he's
watch.
A New York guy.
And he's a New York guy. You're going to see a lot of Eddie.
Yeah. This is a match for. Well, I think we'll hear John Moxley's music at the end of Rampage because it's the sing along music. I think this is going to be Eddie Kingston's night.
Oh, I agree. And if you want me to call my shot on where I think the match is that's missing, I think we're going to see some Proud and Powerful.
Well, Santana and Ortiz and the Lucha Bros are facing Butcher, Blade, and Private.
Oh, that's right. They're in the middle of that one. So,
and there could be some dissension between that Lucha Bros, Santana Ortiz team because they do feel like they're just on the cusp of a tag team title match. So maybe they don't see dissension here. Maybe they continue this little alliance and we see it later. But
I could see. I mean, that crowd is going to be on fire for both of those. There's a massive Latin community that's definitely going to that show. Like, putting those two teams together on a 4-way would have been like, if that would have been the tag match, that would have been out of control. But I think looking at the way these cards are put together, they honestly just tried to put almost as much talent as they possibly could on these cards.
Oh yeah. You got Sting on here wrestling. He's only going to wrestle a few times a year.
You got Sting wrestling, first live TV match for CM Punk. Like, they want New York to know we're going to bring the heat if we're going to be here. And I think Tony had said they plan on doing this. This is an annual stop for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they put that many asses in the seats, why wouldn't it be?
Jeff Johnson asking if Rampage is going to be taped after Dynamite tomorrow night. Yes, it will be. So the spoilers will be out there. It's a 4-hour show that these people are going to get when they show up in Queens. So it's going to be a heck of a night for them. But yeah, try to avoid the spoiler sites if you can, because I think that you're going to want to see how this stuff plays out. There's no matches on Rampage that are super, super important to not know the outcome of. It's not like you're watching a title match or a number one contender match or anything like that. But yeah.
Yeah, so and that's interesting, right? The only title match we really have is the women's match.
That's right. No
so
Miro on here either, by the way.
That is good. Well, yeah, I think we got Miro. I think will be.
I'm sure he'll have a promo.
Miro could be that 6th. I don't think we're going to see him versus Sammy Guevara right now, but who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, and then you also have Sammy Guevara is obviously going to be an opponent for Miro, and then Miro doesn't seem to be satisfied with his Eddie Kingston situation either, so I think he's going to have maybe something to say there too.
I think Miro went into that crowd in Chicago and heard how loud it was and said, I don't want to get away from this right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't think he's ever gotten that kind of response on either side of it since he's been anywheres. Like, that thing was insane. So I think maybe the reason why we've only got 5 matches in Dynamite is for kind of what you called earlier. And I think it's because Omega and Bryan are going to go long.
Yeah. Or something else will go long and surprise us.
That could be too. That could be too, for sure.
So the other thing I want to mention, we talked about this incredible ticket sales that they've had in New York. And WWE is right there with them running New York, the same markets. Now WWE ran SmackDown in Manhattan. They did very, very great, good ticket sales. They, even if they sold every ticket they wanted to in Madison Square Garden, it wouldn't touch this because there's far more seats here. So set that one aside and look what they're doing in Long Island for the opening of the UBS Arena for both a Dynamite and a I'm not sure if it's Raw or SmackDown, but WWE has a show there and AEW has a show there. They both tickets went on sale around the same time. WWE sold about 2,000 tickets. AEW sold about 6,000 tickets. So
that graphic that was going around the other day with the clip was crazy to me. And again, it speaks about momentum, right? Like this is a situation where based on days and times and things and shows that are run and stuff like that, we're going to see if they're going to keep throwing up dynamites like this, and the fact that Monday Night Raw has to go against Monday Night Football, they're going to take them on raw gross numbers a couple of weeks. That's going to happen.
Point, yeah.
We're going to start seeing that.
The other thing about ratings is that ratings lag.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hot today. Ratings don't automatically appear. It's ratings come along 2 to 3 months later. Look at right now, if you want like an indicator of what's hot, you look at the ticket sales, and then later, a couple months down the road, we're going to see the results of all these hot ticket sales, and it'll be in the ratings. Right. So if AEW is picking up momentum now, 3 months from now, they're doing 1.4, 1.5 numbers or something like that, crazy. What seems to be crazy, and then WWE sliding down because of football. You're going to be in that situation where you're looking at two companies that are in a virtual tie on cable.
Well, and I think your biggest difference right now is just the SARSA concept, which a lot of people talk about that are in entertainment, and WWE doesn't have a lot of surprise, right? So AEW is grabbing talent that's moving to them for whatever reason they're deciding to move into them. They're bringing them in. It's well-respected talent. It's people that people wanted to see continue their story underneath the WWE brand, and with them sort of, the tradition being to bring them in underneath the NXT brand, build them up, repackage them, and bring them up. You're just outside of bringing guys back like a Brock or whatever, you're not getting a lot of that surprise side for the WWE product, and you're getting all of that in AEW, and it's good choices and it's good picks. So it's like it makes it even more must see. And because of the width of the roster and the lack of repetition, it's not like I'm just seeing a different ribbon on the same pig over and over and over again. Yep. And it feels like that, like they just, gosh, by the time they move on in the WWE storyline, we've seen like every iteration that those two wrestlers could have ever wrestled each other in over the course of months, and
including 2 or 3 singles matches probably.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I think I talked about this last week or the week before, that I think the hardest part for the performers is the blow off match a lot of times can't be the best.
Yeah.
It's
you have to have a match to get everybody excited to see the match.
Yeah, you're supposed to culminate to this big conclusion where it's like, yes, finally we're gonna get the payoff and we're gonna see this awesome thing. Well, you know what? Maybe that Monday Night Raw no DQ match was the best of the series and stuff like that. Now, from a holistic standpoint, it's great. You can pick that apart and say, okay, well, I need to watch the product because I don't know when the best is going to be. However, like I want my best to be pay-per-view. And if you've run so many iterations to get to there, and then that's the end of it, I think that's part of the reason why watching that product as a fan, when I watch the pay-per-views, sometimes the pay-per-views feel flat because I feel like, okay, that was a good match. I know these guys are going to wrestle or these gals are going to wrestle, and it's going to be a fun match. But it's probably not going to be the best that we've seen.
Yeah.
Versus what we see with this product where it's, a culmination or there's some kind of iteration to it, or a lot of times they keep the performers sort of apart from each other, like whether you're doing the Labors of Jericho or however they're deciding to tell the storyline, where it's like, man, the build up to it is such a big deal. And then it happens. And even like that Miro Kingston match was brilliant to start off with it at All Out. And my gosh, now it's not one of the, it's not one of those things where you see gosh, thank God that Miro and Eddie Kingston are moving on. No.
Yeah.
Hey, can we cycle back to that thing? Can we get to 3 matches with those two guys, please? And their styles don't even line up normal. Like they're bulls, but they're very different stylistically in the ring. And like, that's interesting to see, but you know what? We might not see it for 4 months. Who knows?
No.
Minoru Suzuki shows up, you figure something out. Like,
yeah, we won't be sick of it by the time we see it again.
Correct.
Nice
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, one of the matches we didn't talk about was in detail anyway, was the Men of the Year versus Jericho and Hager. And the reason I bring that up is because Josh Alexander, Ethan Page's old partner before he adopted Scorpio Sky, he's the Iron Man. And he, on this past weekend, exercised option C. He's going to get a title match against Christian Cage at Bound for Glory. So, Travis, there will be a special that Al Carr will be hosting for Bound for Glory on October 23rd. You and I will be on the Jericho crew, so we won't be able to talk about it in detail. But, man, we saw Josh Alexander go 60 minutes in a Broadway with Fred Yehi in Chicago. And all the momentum in the world seems to be behind this guy. He just became a wrestler full-time after like 15 years. Is Impact, you think, going to pull the trigger? And this is going to be the guy who gets the title back for them.
I would be okay with it. I think Josh, it's hard to find somebody that works harder, right? Like he did the 60-man on their program with TJP. Gosh, I hope he gets paid by the minute, because the guy's worked more hours of wrestling in the last 30 days than probably anybody that I've ever seen. I mean, this is out of control. Yeah, like this is, what we were seeing from Ibushi Okada in the Tokyo Dome, going 45 every night or whatever, or Jay White in the same situation. Like American wrestlers, you just don't see work this hard. He's interesting. I think where he is a little flatter is his mic work and stuff, but I could probably say that about the Impact brand in general.
Yeah, we haven't seen it a lot, to be fair. Like we really haven't seen him take control of the microphone. When Ethan Page was there, Ethan Page did all the talking because he's Ethan Page.
Yep.
So,
so hopefully he's put in some work there. I think Christian would look at, Josh's body of work with enough reverence and respect for him to say, yeah, you know what? I don't need this belt. Like, move on and move me back over to the other side and call it a day. I wouldn't be surprised by that change at all. I think you get to go face to face, and you got a face title holder. Looks like Callahan, I guess, got hurt recently too. Yep. So
he's gonna be out for a while.
There's, that's, where you can talk about, Eddie or a couple of the other guys kind of be in the face of Impact Wrestling. I think with Alexander on his own, with his run with the X Division title and stuff like that, he's a very respectable wrestler, and he can take on whoever you decide to challenge, right? You throw Moose in the ring against him, he's going to have a match. You throw Ace Austin in the ring against him, he's going to have a match. You throw Johnny Swinger at him, he's going to have a match. Like he is their best bout machine right now by far, because he just goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a couple of headlines to get into. We've gone way long talking about Wrestle Grand Slam, so let's go to a commercial real quick. We'll get back. We'll talk about what's going on with the G1, what's going on with Ric Flair. We'll be right back, so stick with us. If you love the Daily Wrestling News Show, then I want to tell you how you can support us. First, check out bodyslamclothes.com. You can get a variety of shirts for just $20, and all of them come in the super soft style, and the price you see includes all sizes and shipping. Get 10% off 2 or more shirts with the promo code SHIRTS10. Go to bodyslamclothes.com right now to check it out. And join Joey Jarzenka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Friday nights for the Primetime Rundown. They take you through the world of sports, and the show kicks off each Friday at 7 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And each Tuesday, Al Carl hosts the Essential Wrestling Podcast alongside John Smith, myself, John DeConnie, and Gary Mahaffey. It's another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling. Here are our analysis on who we think is going to win the week's matches. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. Pro Wrestling Pick'em. It's a place where you can join or host a Pick'em League to test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling. Create an account and join a league now at ProWrestlingPick'em.com so you can play against your friends or play against the universe. and the Body Slam Brigade newsletter, currently going out to over 4,200 people each Friday. It consolidates all the top stories in professional wrestling into a quick-to-read email written by me, for you, for free. Sign up now at bodyslambrigade.com. And of course, this show, the Daily Wrestling News Show. We're here every day, Monday through Thursday, and occasionally on Friday. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch us live on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. This is the Daily Wrestling News Show, and we thank you for your support. We are back and talking about going from one hot promotion straight to another. GCW sold out the Ukrainian Cultural Center this past Saturday, and GCW has basically sold out every show that they've done. You can't get a ticket to them unless you get it on, day one or day two. But the interesting thing that came out of this show this past weekend, yes, Ron Funches was on the card and he wrestled Tony Deppen, and that's something. But the main story out of that was that Minoru Suzuki is going to be wrestling Nick Gage. I heard reports of basically every wrestler was sort of swarmed as they came through the curtain at this show in Los Angeles. But when Nick Gage walks out at the end to put his challenge down against Minoru Suzuki, it was incredible, I guess. So everybody wants to touch him and, be around him. It's Beatlemania, all that stuff. It's very weird in a very underground sort of way, the following that this guy has. But Minoru Suzuki, like you mentioned before, he's doing his tour.
Yeah, you get baffled by Nick. Nick doesn't baffle me, and Nick doesn't baffle me because he's like this everyman thing. Like it does have the feeling like I didn't ever get to see the Ramones or the Sex Pistols or anything like that back when punk music was really popular, because I compare it more to the punk movement than I do the Beatles movement, because that was like a bunch of screaming prepubescent teens, and like I don't think Ringo or any of the gang was worried about their safety. When the Ramones or the Sex Pistols or Johnny Rotten or any of those guys came out, like that was a raucous, crazy crowd that was like beating on you. And that's what Nick comes out to. And honestly, I've got Nick by about 70 pounds. Nick is not a big dude. He's very slender. He looks like the guy that might, come to your house and lay some carpet down for you, something like that. Just crazy. And like, I'm happy that GCW has the success they have. I mean, it is, Saturday morning cartoons. It's the variety hour. You're going to get everything you can imagine, and some of it you're going to like, and some of it you might hate, and some of it you might grow to appreciate. And that's kind of the show. You're going to get car crashes and train wrecks and glass tubes smashed over heads and things like that. But
you also get comedy matches and everything else. So
you're going to get everything under the sun. And I'll tell you what, you get a bunch of performers and a bunch of athletes that work their asses off. They love what they do, and they love their fans. And shout out to Mittens as well, who's got to be front row. I don't know how he does it every single time. He's got to have it in. He was certainly front row at Dynamite last week, so good for him.
Yeah. So the other thing that they announced over the weekend that basically has you and I like salivating to see is this Bloodsport card. Of course, it's again October 22nd, so you and I will be busy. But Minoru Suzuki, Calvin Tankman, Killer Kelly, Marina Shafir, all announced so far. So I'm sure that'll be excellent. So
literally everybody's running on the Jericho Cruise. I'm like, this is annoying to me. So I'm going to have to get back, and I'm going to have a lot of wrestling to watch and catch up on for sure.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on to the Ric Flair stuff. We talked about Ric Flair and Dark Side of the Ring, Plane Ride from Hell, and detail yesterday. But Ric Flair issued a statement on Twitter. He basically said that he aired all his dirty laundry on the ESPN's 30 for 30. They found, and ESPN found no indication of sexual assault. He says because there never has been any sexual assault. So that's Ric Flair's point of view on the subject. Like I said, we talked about this at length yesterday. WWE has removed the Woo from their then now forever show opener. They also took down any remaining merchandise they had, and they took down WWE Storytime Episode 1 from Peacock. This was the story time where he was recounting the time he was flying to Honolulu, and he the flight attendants apparently insisted that he wear the robe, which He wears nothing under the robe. So he told that story. So
yeah, I won't go into too much comment other than to say, like, it's interesting. You've got a corporation who is fully aware of activities and behaviors and things in the past. And like, as somebody that's, working on 15 years of sobriety, I'm certainly not somebody that can't say that there's no such thing as redemption and people don't change their ways. And obviously, he has certainly made some adjustments in his life, at least based on actions and behaviors moving forward with regard to the things that he did in the past and the person that he was in some way. However, going back and deciding to clean up this stuff now seems a little bit not above board. So now
it's dumb.
it's become
It's
an
dumb
issue.
because you know what? It's not that WWE didn't know about this stuff. So they're going to act like they're taking the higher ground now by taking the stuff down. They knew it happened or it didn't happen.
Well,
Either
and here's
way.
the deal too. If they're taking that stuff down, understand all of us were like, Peacock scrubbed. And that's not something that Peacock scrubbed. So
Right.
corporate Peacock decided that that was okay and appropriate for us to listen to and see. And like, I don't know. I hate the revisionist history. For me, I'm a person that thinks that we need to learn from that kind of stuff and move on. So you know what? Give me a graphic at the beginning that says there are some things in here that we don't agree with now and that are a period of the time, but we want to make sure that they're historically documented in the right way so that we can move forward and we can progress as a society. And then go forward with that, because it is a very different world now than what it was
let them
back
start
then.
a conversation as opposed
Correct.
to trying to
Don't
pretend it never happened.
you're censoring it and make it and pretending it didn't happen. You're getting away from anybody that was a victim of that situation, and you're just not moving. That's the opposite of progress. Cutting out and pretending that things don't exist is not progressive.
Right. Okay. Again, we had to deal with the dark stuff. Let's get back to the stuff we love. Of course, it's not great news though. Tetsuya Naito in the G1 Climax, he comes down. Sounds like he got sick, but he has a knee injury, presumably from his night 1 match, and all remaining matches for him, the next 9, are going to be forfeited in the G1 Climax. This presents a really interesting situation. All of his opponents are going to get credited 2 points. They're going to then have a singles match that's non-tournament against Yuji Nagata, Satoshi Kojima, or Bushi. So really, it's good that this happened early in the tournament, because if it happened late in the tournament, it might have screwed up the whole finish that they had planned or something like that. But big news that we're losing a person from the tournament.
Yeah, and not a nobody name. This is a
No.
guy that was holding 2 belts not too long ago.
Yeah.
Naito is well loved, well known LIGA member, and like kind of the head of that faction and stuff. So it's interesting. I mean, it's not. I certainly would have preferred that they inserted somebody from LIJ that wasn't in the tournament into his spot and kind of go from there, as opposed to this 2-point automatic reward thing. But
yeah, imagine if they put Hiromu in there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Time Bomb is also
rigid.
a physical time bomb as well.
Yes.
So he could have hurt himself with that many matches too. So
And they're very rigid by programming a junior in there. They probably they would want to beat him every match, and I'm sure they don't want to beat him every match.
They try to hold close to the weight classes that they have. So yeah. Yep.
So on Raw last night, we have a couple of updates for Extreme Rules, and we have a new set of champions. Rhea Ripley and Nikki ASH won the tag team titles away from Natalya and Tamina. Natalya and Tamina, of course, going down in history as the least winning champions of all time. They just keep losing and losing and losing, but all their matches are non-title. So, but they lost the titles last night to Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley.
So much for the Lifetime Achievement Award, Natalya.
It was a little hard to imagine Rhea and Nikki not winning after they came out to the ring. They stopped on the ramp. They talked about Connor's cure for about 5 minutes and then went to the ring. They weren't going to get beat then. Like, I mean, come on.
Put them through the tables.
Like ultimate babyface here talking about Connor's cure.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we had some updates for Extreme Rules. Jeff Hardy defeated Sheamus on the show last night, so that gets him into the United States Championship triple threat match now at Extreme Rules. Of course, Damian Priest already has a victory over Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's beaten Sheamus about 1 million times, I think, including the barroom brawl that they had last summer. So we'll see here. It looks like, to me, Jeff Hardy's just probably taking the pin. So
Yeah, I would.
Like if they want to get that belt off Priest, but they don't want to pin him.
Yeah, poor
That might
poor
be upset.
AAR Priest. Like this is like, I don't know what the average age is in this match, but it's up there, guys.
Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor will now be an Extreme Rules match. So there you go.
I hope maybe they'll define that on Sunday. Is that just no? There's another no DQ match. Is that not an Extreme Rules match then?
Well, there's
Is
not
it
a no DQ match, but the triple threat match, you don't get any disqualifications. So,
correct?
So this
Okay.
is just,
So
it's the
this
name of the pay-per-view.
This is the only Extreme Rules match on the Extreme Rules
It's
pay-per-view
the
so
only
far.
stipulation match that we have. Yep.
Okay.
So
Maybe there'll be some additional rules bending that'll be coming down the pike here. Is that this Sunday?
Yeah, it's this Sunday. Unless they add them on Friday or
Okay.
between now and throw some color at your screen. NXT 2.0 returns tonight. We have a title match. Kushida defends against Roderick Strong, which should be a very good match.
Yeah, that's definitely the physical challenge match of the night for sure.
There you go. So we'll see where NXT 2.0 goes tonight. So
yeah, and we're gonna see not Rick Steiner's son, but Braun
Breaker.
Poor Tommaso Ciampa had to actually say that name in his promo. Maybe he's going right to the belt with his NXT logo gear. It's so weird to me how they decide to pick and choose who gets to carry on the legacy names, right? Like obviously Davey Boy Smith Jr. got to come out with that, and I don't know, I saw something about them not being sure where they're going with him, and then the Skyner guy. So if you're like a WCW legacy, you don't get to carry the name, but if you're a WWE guy, you get to carry your name. Like, are they worried that he doesn't look like Steiner, or he couldn't carry the Steiner name, or there's some baggage there? Like,
his actual name is Rex Steiner.
Rex Steiner.
So, that's his last name.
Yep.
So they can't trademark it, have ownership over it. So that's the reality.
It's a very fortunate.
And maybe they want to see if he's good before they color him with the tribute. What I think is more telling.
Certainly didn't happen with any of the legacies before.
The thing that is weird is that while they didn't give him the name, they also didn't talk about him being a second generation guy. They didn't talk about Rick Steiner throughout the match. So certainly we'll see where he goes. I think he has some upside. I think he does look pretty good. So, but it's
the strange thing about that. The strange thing about that too is like Rick's legacy is very good. He's certainly not as controversial as Scott was. He was a guy that was well liked in the locker room. There aren't any crazy stories out there, poor behavior choices or anything like that. So like you would think like working man grinder, that kind of guy, well loved, like why wouldn't you kind of lean into that a little bit? Like it's strange that like they kind of shut the door about that. Like I've seen him recently. He looks like he's in good physical shape and stuff. You don't want to have maybe a camera spot or something like that, or maybe they just don't want to do the second generation, here's my dad situation. But I don't know. I think it's a good story.
Most of the guys they debuted last week were second generation guys.
So. Absolutely. Yep.
But I think we need to give NXT 2.0 2-3 weeks to see what happens. See if they introduce another 6 new people tonight, then it's going to be kind of weird. But we'll see.
We might see it.
Yeah, we may. This is going to be a totally different approach. I mentioned last week, I think that it's kind of like AEW Dark, but with titles. So, yeah, competitive match here and there. So, all right. With that, Travis, anything else you want to talk about?
I think we're good to go.
Then we will. For Travis, I'm Ryan, and we'll see everybody tomorrow. John Smith will be here to talk about NXT 2.0, whatever.
And the New York Jets.
And the New York Jets, of course. I don't know how that's relevant because I'm not a sports person, but moving on.